Started. Welcome to tonight's Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting, April 9th, 2019. To my left is Mr. Carter Falk, who is the Deputy Planning Manager for the City of Nashua. Across the way from me is Mr. Jay Minkera, Mr. Stephen Lionel, who is our Vice Chair, Mr. Jack Currier, Ms. Estafia Boris, Ms. Marion McKay, who is our secretary, and I am J.P. Boucher, serving as your chairman tonight. This meeting is recorded by written transcript and is also video recorded. We ask that you direct all testimony into the microphone and only one person speak at a time. If you don't have tonight's copy of the agenda, it's on the back table in the back of the auditorium. Tonight we'll be hearing requests only for variances. So usually, sometimes there's special exceptions, but I will only go with variances tonight because that's all we have on the schedule. So a variance is a request that seeks permission to do something that the ordinance does not permit. There are 5 criteria that must be established to approve a variance. First, the variance will not be contrary to public interest. 2, the spirit of the ordinance is observed. 3, substantial justice is done. 4, the values of surrounding properties are not diminished. 5, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Per the City of Nashua zoning bylaws, a minimum of 3 or more affirmative votes are required to approve any application. This board will hear all scheduled cases as long as a quorum of 3 voting board members are present at this meeting, which we have a quorum tonight. Any citizen has the right to contest a decision that this board makes. Should we make a decision that you believe is an error, you have the right to request a rehearing. A written rehearing request must be received through Mr. Falk and the City of Nashua Planning Department within 30 calendar days from the day after a decision was made. Should this board not grant a rehearing request, you can file an appeal directly to the New Hampshire Superior Court. And you can contact Mr. Falk for more information on that. Per our approved Zoning Board of Adjustment bylaws, the review and decision of each application occurs in 2 parts. The first part is what we call the public hearing. This is where the applicant and the citizens address this board and speak to the merits of the case. The order of testimony is as follows. The applicant will have 15 minutes to present their case. Then anyone in favor of the application will have a limit of 5 minutes each to testify. Then those with opposition with questions will also have a limit of 5 minutes each to testify. Then the applicant has an opportunity to come back for 5 minutes to speak in rebuttal. And then a representative of only one person of those in opposition with questions will have 5 minutes to speak in rebuttal. If we get into that situation, I will remind us of the rules again and we'll go from there. So please don't worry about that at this point. Please direct all testimony to this board and not the audience. If you have a question about an application, direct it to the board and we'll get them answered for you. The second part of tonight's meeting is called the public meeting. This is where the board debates the merits of the case amongst ourselves. Please note that during the public meeting, there is no testimony allowed from the audience. We ask that you silence your cell phones, and if you need to have a conversation, we ask you to please step out into the hallway. Mr. Falk, are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
There's one change. The estate of Margaret Whitney at 36 Fifield Street has been withdrawn.
Is anybody here for that case? Okay, good. All right. Tonight, we have 6 members in here tonight with us. Ms. Estafia Boris and Mr. Jay Minkera are our alternates. So tonight, they will participate in all cases. They will also participate in questions and answers and in the public, public meeting, both the public hearing and the public meeting. We will alternate because there is a maximum of 5 voting members for each case. So one member will vote on each case. And we will start the first case with Ms. Boris. And then the second case will be Mr. Jay McCarroll and vice versa. But they will be able to participate in all our conversations tonight and be able to have any questions, they'll be asking those. Does anybody in the audience have any questions about this or anything else? Okay, good. We'll get going. Call the first case, reading to the record, is for Teresa Richard of 10 Forest Park Drive. The description is Teresa Richard, owner, 10 Forest Park Drive, sheet 50, lot 7, requesting the following: a variance from Land Use Code, section 190-32, to exceed maximum size of accessory dwelling unit, 750 square feet permitted, 900 square feet proposed, to enlarge one-car garage into a two-car garage and construct and attach an accessory dwelling unit in the back of the garage in the R9 zoning district. This was tabled from the March 26, 2019 meeting. In that meeting, we approved the special exception to allow an accessory dwelling in-law unit. We are here tonight to continue our discussion and meeting on the second requested variance. And so everything that was said and everything was testified to is on the record. So with that, Ms. Richard, if you mind coming out, give us your name and address, please.
Board Chairman, my name is Teresa Richard. I live at 10 Forest Park Drive in Nashua. I'm here for a variance. As previously in the March 26th meeting, I guess the only in question was the amount of square footage. I said approximately 900. In the original plan that I believe that you had, it was 852. So that's what I would really like to do, is the original plan of 852 square feet. But I've also gone back to my architect and submitted another plan through Kate, which brought me in one more foot, and it dropped us down another 30 feet. So that would be approximately 822 square feet is what I'm going for.
Okay, thank you. We did get the revised drawings and the exact square footage, so
Okay.
thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mrs. Richard? Okay, seeing none? Thank you. You're all set.
Okay, thanks.
Whoops. All set?
Well, I didn't see the 822. Was that on the
It
drawing?
was in the email sent to us.
Okay.
Yeah, so the email said 852, and then the alternate plan was that the architect took 1 foot off the back of the addition, which reduced it to 822. But in Mrs. Richards' email, she did say that she prefers to stay with the original plan, but that was the alternate plan.
All right, thanks.
Is that correct, Mrs. Richards?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else here to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none, anybody with questions, concerns, or oppositions to this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open the public meeting. I, again, reviewed the case. I think I'm in the same maybe position that I was in the last meeting. I think it was great. We get an exact square footage. Again, I believe that this addition, with the way it was originally designed, and now we have the exact square footage, and I don't have any issues or anything that would cause me to really go against the applicant's wishes for the 852 square feet. And again, I believe that the addition is off the back. I don't think it's not really going to be seen by too many people. I don't think that, in my estimation, if there was to be a reduction, that it would be really that noticeable. I think that as you look at what was proposed, and I understand we're taking all the square footage that was in the hallway and everything, but there is kind of a common hallway there from the garage walking in. Again, I'm not justifying that. I'm just saying that this is not just a square box that was put on the house. I think it's integrating into the house. So with that, I think it's reasonable, and I would be in favor of the original 852 square feet requested. Ms. McKay.
I concur with everything that you said, and I too am in support. I think that it's lovely thing when we get to do this, but you can't see it in the other houses around there. It's just gonna be in keeping with the neighborhood. I'm good with it.
Mr. Lionel?
Difference between 820-something square feet and 850-something square feet, especially given it's in the back of the house, doesn't really amount to much, and so I'd be willing to vote for the larger area.
Thank you. Mr. Correa?
I'm at the same place. I mean, as you've all noted, that additional foot or reduction of a foot is in the back of the house. And you remember from the pictures and the site walks that this house, you know, it looks equivalent with this proposal, I think, to the houses around it. It's a bit smaller now. So being that it's in the back, and I agree, I don't think you're gonna see it at all from the street. And I appreciate the applicant has had an architect, go through this design, because it's specific what's gonna be built. So I'm also okay with the proposed 852.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara?
I'm not voting on this one, but I just can't get there. I totally appreciate the desire of the applicant to have more square footage. I can't speak to the wisdom of the adopting the 750 square foot minimum, but I have to assume that there was a rationale for that. I don't see any justification other than desire. It's not the difference between 820 and 850, it's the difference between 750 and 850. It's not a case where there's something peculiar about the property. It's not within an existing home where it would be challenging to accommodate it in another way. It's not part of an addition that serves another purpose, whereby you would just have useless or unusable space. It's a completely new addition to the house, and whether to make it 700, 750 square feet, or 900 square feet is purely at the election of the owner. So I just don't see any peculiar circumstance. I don't see anything about the property. It's simply a desire to have something larger. And for me, that's not a sufficient justification.
Thank you. Ms. Boris?
I am actually in support in the 852 square feet.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
May I suggest
Oh,
that
I'm sorry.
we make a motion to limit it to 860 square feet rather than 900?
I think what the proposal would be is 852. Am I correct? 852. I'd be making a motion for 852.
Okay, that's fine.
Would that be amendable to you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I think that's what was in the documentation we got, so. And I think, again, we can approve any number we choose as long as it's less than what was advertised, right? So
It's the 900.
I'll go with 852 is what she told us. I'd like to make a motion to approve the area variance for Teresa Richard of 10 Forest Park Drive. She's seeking a variance from the Land Use Code, Section 190-32, to exceed maximum size of an accessory dwelling unit, 750 square feet permitted, 852 square feet proposed, to enlarge one-car garage into a two-car garage and construct an attached accessory dwelling unit in the back of the garage. It's in the R9 zoning district. We believe that the variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property, given the special conditions of the property, and the benefits sought by applicant cannot be achieved by some other method reasonably feasible for the applicant to pursue other than area variance. We did note in our discussions, those who are in favor of the application, that it does fall within the neighborhood. There are similar homes that have these second-story additions and two-car garages, and we feel that the addition being in the rear of the property is something that most people would not recognize as being as larger than 750 square feet. We find that it is in the spirit and intent of the ordinance. It will not adversely affect property values of surrounding parcels. We have no testimony one way or the other. It is not contrary to public interest, and substantial justice would be served. With that, I make a motion to approve the area variance. Seconded by Ms. McKay. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's 5-0. That motion passes. Congratulations, ma'am. Just don't forget, there's a 30-day window of appeal, but you're all set, and if you need more info, you can call Mr. Falk and move on to your next step. Thank you. With that, I'll close case number 1. Gonna open case number 2. Case number 2 is for Perimeter Day LLC. Applicant is Ashlyn Rockwell, McGonigal School of Irish Dance, 116 Perimeter Road. The description is Perimeter Day LLC owner, Ashlyn Rockwell, McGonigal School of Irish Dance, 116 Perimeter Road, Sheet E, Lot 1510, requesting use variance from Land Use Code, Section 190-15, Table 15-1, number 251, to allow a dance school in a portion of an existing multi-tenant building. It's in a zoning district, airport industrial. And again, Mr. Minkara will be voting on this application. Is everybody here to present that case? Welcome, welcome. Give us your name and address. And
My name is Ashlyn Rockwell. I'm at 30 Carriage Lane in Milford. I am the owner of McGonigal School of Irish Dance.
Just want to walk us through it. We have your application. Just kind of walk us through. We have a thorough application here, but just walk us through and tell us what you want to do, where you're doing it.
Sure. So the McGonigal School of Irish Dance has been in Nashua for over 25 years. We've had great success. Recently, I overtook the business a few years ago, and we are looking to expand. The unit that we found at Perimeter Road is fantastic. It's a lovely space. It requires little construction to be ready for us. Very little disruption to everyday life over on that end of the airport. It's great for the public. The use as a dance studio is cleared in 12 out of 15 zones within Nashua. Most of them downtown, as I can see, so we're just trying to branch out a little bit into a space that's large enough to continue with the public service. And we've been a member of the Nashua community for so long that we have many alumni around, and we do a lot of community service and things like that with different schools in the area. And as such, we're looking to open another fitness location for kids and adults alike. There's CrossFit gyms and restaurants and things like that in the area. So as we are mostly off-peak work hours, traffic should not be an issue, and we pose no threat to any residential neighborhoods that are close by.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Minkara?
As you noted, there are a large number of zoning districts that do permit the school. Did you look at other locations in other zones?
I've been looking for many years. We've been looking to expand for quite a bit of time. It's hard to find an area big enough for Irish step dancing specifically. It's a bit different than other types of dance. Something that's safe for the kids, well climate controlled, things like that. It's hard to find level surfaces. Pretty much we've looked in mills and things like that, but it's hard to find something with a safe floor as well as safe parking and an area that's accessible to the clients.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, ma'am.
Of course. Thank you.
Does anybody else like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none, anybody with questions, concerns, or opposition to this application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Curry.
I thought the application pretty much stands on its own. You know, when I looked at the site, I didn't have any concern with it. You know, I appreciate Mr. Minkara's question about, other locations. I take the applicant's testimony at face value that it's been hard to find for the unique type of dance that they have. I also appreciate the letter from the owner. I mean, we've had applications like this where, sometimes the owner shows up wondering what's being requested and doesn't even know what the color of his current building is. But this owner's obviously been very involved with this applicant and, writes a letter of support also saying how it's not going to be a negative impact to the neighborhood. So even though it's not permitted in the airport industrial zone, I think it's won't be an issue, and I don't have any concerns, but I find support for it to where I'm at, but I'm interested to hear five other opinions.
I would agree with you. It's funny, when you drive down Airport Road, when you get to that building, and again, it's just my perception, it's more of what you kind of expect, it's kind of almost more retailish type, you know? Mean to say it, like, it's a little different than what else is on that road, right? You look at a lot of hangars, a lot of more type of industrial type buildings. So when you got down to the end, you know, there's good parking. I went there at night, it's good lighting, so, and then, you know, I understand that the space is probably newer, and there's, I know that the spaces are a little bit larger, so I think it fits in fine. And again, I think, yeah, and I would agree with what you've said also. Any other? Mr. Becerra?
Could I ask her a question of Mr. Falk?
Yes, go ahead.
So I noticed there are a wide range of uses in that area. There's also a tremendously long list of uses that are either allowed in the district, permitted, or by conditional use. Any history of variances that have been granted for other uses, either on this particular property or in that general vicinity that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of in this building. There was a school for autistic children, just before this, that this board heard probably about a year or so ago. That's the only one that really comes to mind on perimeter. There's not that many buildings on perimeter by the time you, not counting the ones on the airport side, those are all pretty much hangars for the airplanes. The other side of the street, there's really not that many businesses that have come before here. The only one I can think of is the autistic school. But, I think that's it.
Any other discussion? Mr. Becerra?
I struggle with this one a bit. I think what impacts me is, you know, a couple of things, but one, as I mentioned earlier, the range of uses that's permitted in this district and that's permitted by conditional use is astonishingly long. And it includes such a variety of uses that it's hard for me to find that a use like this is somehow incompatible when I look at the breadth of what's allowed. Also, looking at this particular group of office buildings, it's clear, or this building is clearly not intended, well, maybe that's unfair for me to say, it doesn't appear to me to be intended to be a support use for the airport, nor are many of the other uses in the area that either exist or are allowed, and that inclines me to feel that this is a reasonable use of the property, and I would support it.
All right, thank you. I think we have the same kind of challenges right on the outside of the airport, in the airport industrial off of Hammer Street. I think we've seen some of this type of thing.
Yeah, because the airport, what Mr. Boucher is speaking to on the other side of the airport, at the end of those streets, I can't
Yeah, like
remember their
Dumaine and all
names.
those, yeah.
Dumaine, that is touching on the airport in the AI zone. My suspicion is that the AI zone, as it was written, was intending to be more like industrial support services for the airport. We've seen requests, we've seen the one autism school there on Perimeter Road. I think that's the only one on this side, but on the other side, there have been quite a few that have been, you know, outside of what the AI requests, and kind of, you know, the buildings have been existing there a long time, these other requests, and they've been vacant for a long time. And I guess one other thing I'm throwing out in support of this request is, you know, I didn't see, like, harm coming to the district. There were a couple requests, I think it was an auto repair facility, which was off of Sharon Ave, and that, I remember there were neighbors, abutters, businesses abutting that felt whatever, you know, the business was not compatible with the rest in that area. So there have been some denials in the AI zone. Just as a little mental recalling, imperfect mental recalling, I throw out, but I think I'm fairly much on target with that. So that's also, again, a bit why I'm in support here, because, you know, the AI zone year, I think it's not unreasonable to have a school of dance, you know, especially when there's a autism school next to it that seems to be doing well. Mr. Falk's hand is up.
Mr. Chairman, there's also a recent rezoning that was just approved for numerous pieces of property on the, well, it's kind of located on the other side of the airport, on the other side of the runway. Mr. Courier, you mentioned like Sharon Avenue and some of those side streets. A lot of that area is all zoned AI. It was just rezoned to PI, a Park Industrial Mixed-Use Zone. And that goes from about where Peters Auto is, all the way up to north of Sunnyside Acura. All those pieces of property have all been rezoned, because none of them are used for airport-related support uses. There's a car dealership, there's restaurants, you name it. Dozens of different uses, and none of them have anything to do with the airport per se. Perimeter Road is a little bit different. That street on the airport side of the street are all the hangars and all the airport-related facilities. So it's a little bit different than the properties off of Amherst Street.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Anybody like to make a motion? Mr. Courier.
I'll make a motion, let me just grab my paperwork here. Make a motion on behalf of the owner, Perimeter Day LLC, and the applicant is Ashlyn Rockwell, and also the McGonigal School of Irish Dance. Again, the address is 116 Perimeter Road. And again, the request is a variance to allow, what's being requested is a variance from Code Section 190-15, Table 15-1, and its use number 251. And the request is to allow a dance school in a portion of an existing multi-tenant building. I believe the board finds a variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property, given the special conditions of the property. I think the board recognizes it's in the AI district, but this and some other buildings right in the adjacent to this are not, haven't been supporting the AI district, and so that to allow a school of this Irish dance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property. I think the board finds it's within the spirit and intent of the ordinance to allow this use variance. I think the board finds it'll not adversely affect property values of the surrounding parcels. I think the board finds it's not contrary to public interest, and substantial justice to the landowner is served by allowing this use variance. So I'd make a motion to approve as proposed tonight.
Seconded by Mr. Lionel. Any other discussion? All those in favor? That's five of us. That's Mr. Minkara.
I have him listed.
Congratulations, your application is approved. Just be aware there's a 30-day window of appeal. If you need any more information, you can call Mr. Falk. Thank you very much. With that, I will close the public meeting for case number 2 and open the public hearing for case number 3. Case number 3 is Brenda Lavoie and Tim Demanche, 101 Farley Road. Brenda Lavoie and Tim Demanche, 101 Farley Road, Sheet 1, Lot 31, requesting a variance from Land Use Code, Section 190-264, to exceed maximum accessory use area, 40% permitted, 78.9% requested, to construct a 48-foot by 30-foot, 3-bay metal garage. It's in the R30 zoning district. Come on up. Again, just give us your name and address again, please, for the record.
Brenda Lavoie, 101 Farley Road, excuse my voice. Tim Demanche. The current garage we have is too small to house all the items that we have. I have a plow, we have an ATV, we have a tractor, we have a Bobcat. There's just too many things that don't fit in that garage. We're coming with the way our house is placed. We have the Pennachuck access road, and there's a church on that side, and then on the left side is our other neighbor. We want to put it in the back left corner. We're coming 72 feet in, so, and it's all trees in that buffer area, which we don't want to get rid of, so that neighbor will have a buffer. It's gonna look like our house. It's not gonna be an eyesore. Currently, we have a canopy garage that's housing everything, which is just not, it's just not enough. And we are the only, there is nobody, we don't block anybody's view. There's nobody around us, so. Anything else?
That's good. Any questions for the applicant? So and again, it's just part for more discussion, but there's a structure way in the back. Is that just a shed?
That is a barn.
It's a barn. Okay.
When they were horses there. But that also is very small, and to access that, we have to use that access road to go to it, so.
Is there any questions for the applicant? Mr. Correa?
I was just curious, the choice of proposed construction of metal versus, say, a traditional, like, wood barn, what was, could you give me what's the rationale for that?
Metal structure will be,
You go to the mic, please.
Introduce yourself, please.
Tim Demanch. The metal structure itself will be constructed within 3 days versus a wood structure, which will take 2 to 3 weeks. And as the footing and the floor for the garage itself, I mean, there's no time to it at all. It'll go a lot faster. There won't be any disturbance through the neighborhood. And it's really, there's just about 1,000 acres behind us, and we have the one neighbor to our left. And it'll actually give them more privacy with the building covering their backyard from us and anybody going down that access road, which is private anyway, so there shouldn't be anybody except for the one owner that has a camp at the very end.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Minkara?
What's the reason for the very high central bay?
Just for looks. Well, we both have vehicles that we need a taller bay to get them in.
The tractor's got that.
The tractor has the backhoe on the tractor. So we need, we just had that one middle one. The other two are just regular. They're both all three of them are taller than the current garage we have.
Mr. Minkara?
So, is all that equipment, the backhoe, Bobcat, are those for use on this property, or are they for use elsewhere or in association with a business?
Well, we use we have used it on the property, but it's not, if we have friends that need a Bobcat, we let them borrow it. We are a combined houses. So we each had a house, then we bought this house, and now we're combining. So he has items and I have items, and they just don't fit, all of them. And we don't want to leave, like, he's a drywaller, so there's some items that really shouldn't be left out to the elements. So if we can enclose them, because those canopy garages are not really structurally sound.
No, sir. Mr. Falk, just so we be clear, what's allowed for height on a structure like this? What-
For an accessory structure, 20 feet. It's not necessarily the peak, it's the midpoint between the eave and the ridge. That's what we consider the building height. So,
It's only one story, it's not two,
Right.
if that answers any.
So again, having some experience with construction equipment, and I know that sometimes people just have that because they have them. It's the boom on the backhoe, right, is what's tall, right? And you're trying to get that in. And again, your testimony, I'm just asking you, right, there's a height limit, so basically this is not gonna be anything higher than what's allowed in the
No.
building code?
No.
right? Okay.
I believe,
You can just speak to the mic, I'm sorry, just for the record.
sorry, I believe at the highest point, it's 16 feet. The bay door will be 12 feet. You need 2 feet for the roll-up itself, and then the peak.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none. Anybody with questions, concerns, or oppositions to this application? Come on up. Give us your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Ken Santerre, 107 Farley Road. I'm in a butter.
So you're two houses down, right?
Yes,
But
I
your-
am.
But the back of your property touches their back of their property?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Our concern is the size, the size of it. It's pretty big barn, the garage. It's doubling the space of, is it usable accessory area? And there's no other places like that in the area. And the closest places that got buildings like that is Perimeter Road. We're just not in favor of it, and none of the neighbors really are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Oh.
Is there any questions for?
No, I mean, I took a look at this site. I came and went from the Nashua side versus, so I didn't go much further down Farley Road than probably turned around in your driveway. So I don't know, I guess I just didn't see what the lay of the land was beyond that. So I guess it's just an observation. But you're saying that you feel this is out of character with what's on balance on this street, is
Yeah,
that?
it's an additional three-car garage. He has a two-car garage and a barn already on the property, and he needs a three-car garage as well. There's nothing like that in the area.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
No,
All right. Thank you for coming.
have a good night.
Appreciate it. Sir, are you leaving or are you staying?
No, I'm gonna sit
Okay, I just want to make sure if you were going, I was going to tell you that you might want to come back up depending on what's said. Anybody else in the audience like to speak in opposition or with questions of this application? Okay, seeing none. You have an opportunity to come back for 5 minutes to speak on what you've heard and anything else that you'd like to make clear to us. Just give us your name and address again, sorry, for the
Tim
record.
DeManch, 101 Farley Road. The reason for the garage itself is the trucks that I have do not even come close to fitting in the garage that we have now. The lawn equipment, snow removal equipment, there's no room for it whatsoever. The barn is an animal barn. They raised horses in there. There's a dirt floor. That's not conducive to storing equipment without it rusting and mice getting into it. This garage would house the vehicles and the equipment without being in the elements of the weather, mice, getting into the equipment and ruining it. The garage and the ceiling, right now, I can do this and touch it. And I have a full-size crew cab Chevy pickup, and I cannot park that in the garage. It won't fit. And the size of the garage itself, the one we want to build, will house all these pieces of equipment, plus my vehicles. And, as she said earlier, I'm a drywaller, so I have staging, panel lifts, and other equipment that I use for my work.
So just to be clear, would it be fair for me to say, I would just say for myself, that basically you want to be able to store this equipment inside and not have it obviously exposed to the elements, but just out and then just all out where I guess we could, depending where you put it, we could probably see it, right? But you're trying to get all this stuff uncovered and keep, are you trying to keep the property organized and neat and not be,
Yes.
is that another reason, or is it, I
Those-
don't want to put
those-
words in your mouth.
Yeah, those tents aren't structurally sound for anything. I've already lost 2 at my house in Amherst and lost equipment in them because I had no place to store it. With the building itself, now you're out of the elements, everything's free and clear from getting ruined, branches falling on them. It's not gonna be an eyesore. It's on the left side of the property at a slight angle, and it will also match the existing colors of the house itself. And our house compared to the neighbors' houses is very small. And there's 4 houses to our left. And the neighbor's house next to us, and they have a small piece of property. Unfortunately, they can't do what we should be able to do.
Okay. And is there any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I was just curious, maybe, I don't know if Mr. Demange could answer it or Mr. Falk, but what is the accessory use area existing right now? Like 40% is permitted, 78.9% is requested. Do you know what it is right now with the current structure, out? It sounds like there's 2 on there. I was just curious, like, are they happen to be like right at 40% now, or is it down near 0?
I don't have that information with me.
Okay.
Mr. Mancara?
If I could follow up to that question, is the increase that's shown solely because of the proposed structure, or does it include the existing barn?
My guess is it's probably due to the proposed structure, because it's close to 1,500 square feet.
Okay.
That's pretty good size. I'm not sure what the finished area of your house is.
I believe what we had left from that 40% accessory was 492 square feet.
Sounds about
So
right.
if it's a little less, it's about 1,400 feet, the size of the garage. So we're asking for 1,000 more square feet, give or take.
Let me ask you a
Yes,
question.
yes.
It says here, though, you're going to remove the one, is that the canopy structure you're gonna remove?
Yes, we
So
have,
you're
we
going-
have like, it's really an eyesore, because it just doesn't really, we have stuff leaning up against it, just to make sure it stays, I mean, we have it secured, but I mean, you can only secure so much, so.
Yeah,
Marcia did it, but.
my intent in asking the question was, it's then going to increase the available land use you have for square footage.
Yes.
And that will decrease the amount that is actually being requested. So that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much. Sir, you have an opportunity to come back up and speak for 5 minutes, or you can rest. Are you going to rest? Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to close the public meeting, the public hearing, and open the public meeting. Mr. Lino.
I did drive the entire length of Farley Road, through Milford, through Nashua, and back into Milford, and wherever else it went. And it was, I've never been on that street before. The properties were, it was a very rural feel with very large property, large parcels. And the current house on this property is not very large compared to what I've seen in some other similar size lots, which is partly the reason of going over on the percentage. I think that this proposal would be well in character with the neighborhood, and I support it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Correa?
Well, I guess, I put, value into the abutter's testimony, and, we have an abutter saying it's out of character of the neighborhood. I guess when I looked at the application, quite frankly, the metal structure gave me a bit of pause. I was just kind of wondering, have I ever seen a metal structure? It's interesting where the abutter says on Perimeter Road. I'm like, well, yeah, that's where you see those metal hangers, And, so, we have testimony from the applicant that it'll be painted the same as the house. I mean, there's merit in the sense that I think things would be stored indoors. The rather lousy-looking shelter would be gone. So there's that uptick from it. But I guess, quite frankly, like I say, the metal structure of it, I mean, it doesn't quite jive in my head with the picture that we have. I mean, we have a picture of this, and it looks more like it's like an airplane hangar versus a barn in a rural area. But, so I'm kind of stuck on this one. I'm just looking for help. We have somebody telling us it's within character of the neighborhood. I appreciate Mr. Lionel's testimony. There's big lots out here, and I understand the house is small compared to the others, so you have overage on that. I guess before hearing testimony tonight, I was kind of feeling, well, if nobody thinks it's out of character in the neighborhood, who am I to say it's out of character of the neighborhood? But we have someone telling us that, and it's kind of where my gut was at, but so I don't know. I'm just going to stop speaking and start listening.
Mr. Mancara.
So, just, following up on those comments, I mean, when I look at this, what I'm really looking for, if somebody is coming in and asking for a pretty substantial, to exceed the limitations quite substantially, I'm looking at, well, is what they're requesting really a typical, ordinary, or customer use on a residential property? And when I look at this, I can't get there. This looks like a commercial building to me. And I think from the testimony that we heard, it is in fact going to be used for commercial purposes. It's going to be used to house equipment, which is not typical for a property of this size. This isn't a large rural lot. I mean, it's a good-sized lot, but I wouldn't call this rural. I wouldn't call this a farm property. And again, the appearance of it, yes, I think it's out of character. I think we've heard testimony that it is, but, I mean, it is. It's a metal, industrial, or commercial-looking building that's, in fact, going to be used in association with a commercial business. So for me, I can't get there.
Else? Thank you, Mr. Mancara. Ms. McKay.
The metal shed, when I first looked at it, it did kind of throw me a curve. And then I looked across my driveway at my neighbor's house who has a metal roof. I don't. It's out of character with my neighborhood. Nobody else does either. And yet they have reasons for wanting that metal roof, and supposedly it lasts longer. So I said, self, it makes sense. I don't have any issue with the size, because I remember when my son had to put a third bay on his garage, and it doesn't look like the others because it's longer and higher, because his truck would not fit in the typical garage that would even house the Highlander. It didn't house my son's truck. So again, I saw logic behind wanting or having a need for it. If he's a drywaller and he's got equipment and he needs to have it, and he's got scaffolding and whatever else, those big stilts they use, I don't know. It's gotta be a little bit bigger to house all that, plus he wants to keep it. Then they're taking down that eyesore. And I went and I looked, but I also like to look at the aerial view to see what I'm looking down on. And when I looked on the left side from looking above, all I saw was trees. And I was saying, how, okay, that's going to block a view from a neighbor. We had one abutter who said he's concerned about the size. I can justify the size, and I can justify the metal, because A, they said it was faster to put up, so it's quicker to solve their issue, and in keeping with that metal roof, there's reasons why we all drive different cars that are different colors. It's just what we do, and so I find support for this. Yeah, I'm fine, I'm done.
Just to address your issue about the metal building, you know, this drawing is, as you know, is probably just a very basic CAD or architectural type of package. So this, to me, I know is not, it's representative, but it's not what it's gonna look like. And I've seen metal structures, and not to justify it, I'm just saying, I know that they can get, you can certainly paint, but you can get pretty much any color you want, it's just ordered that way. The panels can be corrugated, they can be actually some architectural type features to the structure. So, you know, I think that, I think when you move away from this area of New England and you move out west and stuff, you'll see, and again, I'm not talking about just farms or other areas, there's a lot of metal structures that go up. That's what is more common now than stick-built structures. So these are engineered, you know, and obviously to hold that kind of weight. I knew right away I was looking at a metal structure when I just saw the cross-section. I knew what I was looking at. So I don't think I'm too concerned about the way it looks. I also believe that, you know, it is reasonable to, again, allow somebody to, you know, use their property in a manner that I don't think has really detrimental effect to, you know, the butters or neighbors. You know, I don't think this is something, I mean, I looked at this lot, I mean, as much as some of us may think this is, well, I think this is a real big lot compared to my 10,000 square foot lot, right, in Nashua. So I look at this, I drove out that road and go, I would love to live out here. You know, because a lot of us don't realize there's a little section of Nashua that you can go through, and I said, oh, this is great, I would love to live out here. But I look at it as like, wow, this is a lot of property. But I also understand that, you know, it's not farming or type property. You know, I guess I, again, look at other parts of Nashua, and I try to kind of look at how the city is, and we're talking about, you know, we're out on the outskirts, and I think that, I guess I wouldn't be surprised driving down that road to see that type of a structure. Now, I drove, same thing with Mr. Lionel, I hadn't been out there except for the last time was that project right before that, when they put all those units in, but I drove out further. And if you really look hard, you see some properties that you see some structures way off into the woods, but you have to look. I caught a few, and one's a Quonset hut, the round, you know, the old style. Remember those? They just came in sections or arc sections. So I saw a Quonset, not in Nashua. It was whatever town I was in at that point. But it's not like I looked at it and said, "Wow, that's out of character." I just said, "Well, that's kind of neat. There's a nice big storage area back there, and they have it." So going back to this application. We've got I think, a significantly large lot for the city of Nashua. I think the structures out back, as far as the abutter that was concerned, I understand his concern about the size, but I don't see how that rises to it being something that would be detrimental to his property or to his enjoyment of his property. You know, it just to me doesn't get there because there's a piece of property that's directly in line between his house and this garage. And again, yes, he abuts the property, surely in the back abuts it, but this structure is a ways away from that bordering piece. So I appreciate the fact that, you know, the property will be, we're gonna get rid of that old structure, that temporary structure that's there. And again, what we choose to have and the work we do, you know, everybody has their own calling in life, and I think that wanting to protect, you know, I'm sure that gentleman's self-employed but needs all this equipment to do what he needs to do, and this is where he lives, you know, so I don't think it's unreasonable, the request is unreasonable. Any other discussion?
No, I'm in agreeance. No, I actually agree with everything you said. I'm in support of the application.
No one must make a motion, I'll make it. Okay. So on this case, Ms. Boris will be voting on this case. I'd like to make a motion to approve the area variance for Brenda Lavoy and Tim Demanche, 101 Farley Road. They are requesting a variance from Land Use Code Section 190-264 to exceed maximum accessory use area, 40% permitted, 78.9% requested to construct a 48-foot by 30-foot, 3-bay metal garage. It's in the R30 zoning district. We believe that the variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property, given the special conditions of the property. Again, we discussed the size of the property, the location of the garage. We also discussed its location in the city of Nashua, where it's located, and again, in this area, some of us would consider this a rural area compared to the inner city types of area in Nashua that we all know well. We find that the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method reasonably feasible for the applicant to pursue other than area variance. We believe that it is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. We believe they will not adversely affect the property values of surrounding parcels. It's not contrary to public interest, and substantial justice would be served. With that, I make a motion to approve the area variance. I think Ms. Boris's hand was up first, so Ms. Boris seconds that. Any discussion? All in favor? That is 4-0, with Mr. Currier as.
Well, you didn't call for opposed yet.
What? Oh, I'm sorry. I was making an assumption, I apologize. All those opposed? Mr. Currier. I'm sorry, Mr. Currier.
No problem.
Okay. The motion passes. There's a 30-day window appeal, so just be aware of that before you start any construction. Okay, if you have any questions, you can tell Mr. Clark in his office during regular business hours. With that, I'll close case number 3. And I'll close the public meeting for case number 3, and I will open the public hearing for case number 4. Case number 4 is for Bruce Kinville of 21.5 Fairmount Street. The description is Bruce Kinville, owner, 21.5 Fairmount Street, sheet 62, lot 190, requested the following variances from Land Use Code Section 180-16, Table 16-3. 1, for the minimum lot frontage, 45.9 feet existing, 50 feet required. And 2, minimum lot width, 48.77 feet existing, 60 feet required. Both requests to subdivide one lot into 2 lots and construct a new single-family house. It's in the RB zoning district. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Is this on? Yeah,
Yep.
there we go. My name is Jay Leonard. I'm here on behalf of Bruce Kinville, who's the owner of the property and the applicant here tonight. I'm a lawyer here in Nashua representing him. Our office is at 29 Factory Street in Nashua. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have the plan that I put into the application. If that, should I tack that up? Does anyone? I know you have copies of it.
If you need to refer to that during your testimony, please feel free to tack it up. And as usual, just as a reminder, if you do walk over to that, if you could just grab the mic.
So this is property located at 21.5 Fairmount Street. It has, it's in the RB zone. It's sheet 62, lot 190. And presently, it is a single-family home.
Excuse me, could you grab the mic? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's for the record. I appreciate it.
Just pull it
You
straight
can pull,
out.
you can pull it straight out towards you. There you go. Thank you.
So presently, there is a single-family home that has access off Fairmount Street. You'll see that the lot itself is an odd-shaped lot. And it actually has frontage on both Fairmount and Paxton Terrace. The application is really just about frontage and lot width. The lot is presently a little over 23,000 square feet, I think 23,300 square feet. And right now, there is frontage on both Paxton Terrace and Fairmount Street. We are asking for a variance to allow two lots. The two lots will both have sufficient size, but one of the lots will be non-compliant as regards its proposed frontage and the proposed lot width. And that's the code section 19016, the table of dimensions. The specific request is that we be permitted to have a lot with 45.9 feet when 50 feet is required, and that we be able to have a lot that is 48.77 feet lot width when 60 feet is required. As I say, there's no request for a variance regarding the total area or setbacks or use. It's really just those two dimensions. You should have a packet that includes a GIS or two GIS maps. And I think if you take a look at those, you'll see that it is a very, well, first off, it's a very large lot for the area. As I say, a little over 23,300 square feet. RB zone requires 6,000 square feet for a minimum lot. And you can also see from the GIS plan that the lot itself, in addition to the dual frontage, it's an awkward shape. And that's part of the concern here. As I say, there is an existing single-family home. The last thing in the application is the plan that I have tacked up here. It's a concept plan, so please don't take the boundaries exact, but whatever we do for a subdivision will be compliant, but for the two requests here before you tonight. You can see from the plan the shape of the lot. You can't really see that there's some topographical issues. There's a pretty steep slope in the middle of the lot. Part of the reason that the present single-family home is there is because of the slopes. That single-family home, by the way, has been there a long time, before the neighborhood was fully established. The neighborhood right now, well, and in fact, Mr. Kinville grew up there. The neighborhood right now, you can see in the GIS maps that are part of the application, you can see that it's fairly standard RB established neighborhood. Most of the homes immediately surrounding this particular property are either duplex or multi-family units. I'm not actually aware of any single family. Actually, I take that back. There is one single family on Fairmount that is right next door to the drive. But other than that, they're all of those lots to the north and rear of the property, if you will. Those are all duplex lots, about 6,000 or 8,000 square feet. So this proposal is very consistent with the neighborhood. It will, even after a subdivision, these two lots will be substantially larger than most of the lots in the area. The proposal will, as I say, is really just about the frontage and the width. This plan, as a concept plan, is essentially what the two lots will look like. One thing that Carter and I talked a little bit about, there is ample area here for the second lot to be a duplex lot. And what we intend to do is make sure that the duplex lot does meet we intend to make sure that the second lot does meet the area requirements for a duplex. It's about 12,500 square feet. So that will happen, most likely, but it won't change our request. The request is still just for the frontage and the lot width. In the end, all lots will comply, but for those two requests. And of course, we know we have to go to subdivision process to get the formal approval. So the application itself has a narrative. It's fairly straightforward, but just for the record, I'll kind of go through the legal criteria quickly. And certainly, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer questions. With regard to the first two requirements, not contrary to the public interest and observing the spirit of the ordinance, I think it's pretty clear that this is not contrary to the public interest. It's a very large lot right now, and will actually continue to be the largest lots in the area. So it's consistent in the area of the lots. The proposed uses are going to be permitted uses. All uses will be permitted uses. So again, that'll be consistent with the neighborhood. There's ample access and safety access, so there's no concerns whatsoever regarding emergency, et cetera. There's no harms to any of the rights of other individuals, nor is there any harm to the public generally. So really, it's all very much a part of the plan. It just happens that this is such an awkward-looking lot as it presently exists. It just can't conform to all the regulations. The purposes of the regulations do get accomplished. There's no problem with public roads, there's no problem with sewer, no problem with water. So really, all of those infrastructure kinds of things, the public concerns there are no public concerns. It's consistent with the local ordinances that encourage development of infill lots. This is a lot that has been kind of here, undeveloped for a while. This is going to end up a reasonable development, 2 buildings, one new building. So it's all consistent with the zoning scheme. With regard to substantial justice, strict application of the rules as applied to this particular lot would end up substantial harm to the owner and the applicant for really no benefit to the public. And I think that's kind of the balancing that we do with the substantial justice issue. So it's clearly a substantial justice. There, of course, is a need for housing. This will afford some moderately priced housing to the area. There won't be any adverse impact to the values and the values of the surrounding properties because it'll be consistent. Any additional building will be new and, of course, improve the area, if anything. With regard to the unnecessary hardship, I think this happens to be a pretty good argument for that. Between the very awkward shape of the existing lot, the topographic changes within the lot, the dual frontage on Fairmount and on Paxton Terrace, and the limit of the frontage on Paxton Terrace. As it turns out, if you add all the frontage together, we're okay. It's just that Nashua does not allow you to add the frontage for 2 different roads, or at least as this lot is shaped. So it is an odd shape, and in the neighborhood, it's an extremely large lot. So it's a reasonable use, and there's no fair and substantial relationship between the requirement of lot width or frontage that is fair under the circumstances of this lot and would actually accomplish a legitimate public purpose or goal. There's no question about overcrowding. There's no question about safety. There's no question about all of the things that frontage and lot width accomplish. It really is going to happen anyway, even under this proposal. As I say, we would be presenting a formal subdivision to the planning board later on, should this board approve this request, and it's really just about the frontage and the width. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them. I know Mr. Kinville is here, if there were specific questions from him as well, or for him.
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Currier?
Well, I'm taking a look at the site. I agree, the topographic challenges are surprising. The proposed house Would the first story be at the level of Paxton Street, and would there be, I'm just curious how you'd get a structure there.
Yeah, so what,
I mean, if this were approved, I'm saying, I'm just curious where that would end up, where you think it would end up.
so the question, and as I say, the plan doesn't show it so much, but this is, we're gonna call the new lot. And the difficult terrain is kind of that way, such that where my hand is the lowest point. The parkway, the new parkway is down here. This is the railroad, and then the parkway's right there. So part of the reason for having the compliant lot be the new lot is because we do need some extra frontage to manage that grade change. And I think the new house will be on that lower area, and there will be a drive to that. The present thought is that it'll be a duplex, and you'll be able to have a drive going to each side of the duplex. But that's exactly right. There is some topographical difficulties that we'll have to manage, and that's why that lot needs to be a little larger.
I'm all set.
I had the same concern or question about you, was I didn't know whether or not there was gonna be some type of a easement through the other lot just to get down there, but it's gonna be completely separate.
It'll be a separate access, and I'm not sure I said, but the existing single-family home has present access from Fairmount, and that will continue.
Any other questions of the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else that would have any support for this application, like to come up with support for this application? Seeing none, anybody with questions, concerns, or opposition for this application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Minkara will be voting on this application, correct? Okay. Mr. Currier.
Well, in short, I find support for the application. I mean, you might say, I buy the arguments that the application has and the attorney, as he stated tonight. I mean, the requests aren't that large of an underage, you might say, than what's there. It's a very unique lot, the most unique lots I can imagine. You know, the topography to me is wow, if they can work with that, more power to them. But that's not what we're studying tonight. It's more of just a 2D, you know, could something like this go in? The proposed structure on the proposed new lot, I don't think is out of character at all with like the Paxton Avenue lots. You know, it's almost, this open gap is a little more unusual. There's others, you know, Paxton Street is pretty dense with duplexes, and this would look in character, I think. So I think it meets the criteria, in short. I'm good with it, but, you know, I'm open to hear other opinions.
Anyone else? Mr. Lionel?
I concur with what Mr. Currier said. The request is not significant in terms of the underage, and it looks like a reasonable use of this very unusual property. So I haven't seen anything that would cause me to object to it.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara?
I would also agree, you know, for the reasons stated, but particularly noting the very large size of the lot, and noting that the purposes for which we have frontage requirements, we have the width requirements, I think are met in this case, because the density, even with 3 units, a duplex and a single family, is still below the density that we would see in the area. The area is mix of single family, multifamily, 2-family. You know, again, noted the lot is unusually shaped, and sufficient access is clearly provided from more than 2 fronts, so I would support the application.
Thank you. Ms. McKay?
I too concur with
everything that's been said, and I want to, Mr. Mancara stated the things that I was thinking. That's a huge lot, and it's a small ask, and if, it wasn't for the shape, we wouldn't be here and they wouldn't be asking. So yes, I concur that the geography and the topography are causing this. It's small. It's a small ask.
I also support the application for everything that's been said. Anybody like to make a motion? Mr. Curry.
Make a motion on behalf of Bruce Kinville, the owner. The address is, again, 21.5 Fairmount Street, and the request is an area variance. There's a couple here. The first is for minimum lot frontage. 49.9 is existing, while 50 is the minimum required. And then the minimum lot width, 60 is required, and the request is 48.77. And again, both requested to subdivide one lot into two lots and construct a new single-family house, which just brought up a question. I mean, since our application says single-family house, and there was testimony that it would be a duplex,
I think the single family is on the existing lot. So there's a lot separation. Single family is what's existing on the current lot.
Yeah.
What's going to stay there, I think that's what he was referring to.
sure, I agree with that.
Yeah, and
But the
then,
application says construct a new single-family house.
That's on now the non-conforming lot?
Mr. Mr. Clark.
I just wonder if we have this advertised correctly. I could be wrong, but I'm saying what we've heard tonight is to construct a new duplex, which I think this board might be finding in character, but I'm just wondering if we have this advertised correctly or incorrectly.
Oh, yeah, this says new single family. Did somebody type it wrong?
It's possibly a typo. The application itself that I'm reading doesn't reference whether it would be a duplex or a single family that I can see.
Well, in any case,
plot
it's a
plan we were
permitted
given
use,
doesn't
so it's
say.
not like they're asking for a use that's not
Okay.
permitted. So as long as the land area is met, and I know they're gonna do some, reconfiguring of the lot sizes, but it wouldn't matter with the frontage and width, because that would still stay the same. So there would still be enough land area for two-family, which is a permitted use as well.
Okay, I guess I'll read into the record as we have here before us then, and to construct a new single-family house. Again, I'm making a motion to approve. I think the board finds a variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property, given the special conditions of the property, which per testimony tonight have been the unusual lot size, unusual lot topography, and the current frontage and continued proposed frontage on two roads. Given that situation and the neighborhood that it's located in, I believe that this request is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. I think it will not adversely affect property values of the surrounding parcels. I think it's not contrary to public interest, and substantial justice is served to allow this area variance, these two area variances. So I make a motion to approve as presented.
Second by Ms. McKay. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's 5-0. Motion passes. Thank you. With that, I'll close case number 4. I'd like to take a 5-minute break, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, works for me.
Okay. Take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back.
And you're voting.
to call the meeting back to order. I'd like to call case number 5, open the public hearing for case number 5. Case number 5 is Richard and Patricia Jennings, Echo Development, 324 Lake Street. Description is Richard A. and Patricia A. Jennings, owners, Echo Development, LLC applicant. 324 Lake Street, sheet 104, lot 6, requesting the following. 1, use variance from Land Use Code, section 190-15, table 15-1, number 15, to allow a 6-unit multifamily building, and 2, a variance from Land Use Code, section 190-16, table 16-3, for a minimum lot area, 43,500 square feet required, 28,039 square feet existing. It's an RA zoning district. Welcome. Have your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Zoll. I'm an attorney here with offices at 221 Main Street here in Nashua, and I represent the applicant Echo Development LLC. Before I begin, I've passed out some materials that I'll ask you to take a look at as I make my presentation, but let me start by explaining what each page of these materials are. The first page is a map of this zone, an RA zone, with a bit of the RB zone on the bottom right. And the purpose of this map is to show you the amount of single-family houses, duplexes, and a few other commercial and multifamily uses that I'll be talking about. The single-family houses are marked with a circle and a 1 in a gray circle. The duplexes are marked with a number 2 in a blue circle. And then you can see there are some 3 units, 7 units, and some commercials. The second page of the material is the zoning map, and on the zoning map, I've highlighted in purple the 3 RA zones in the city, and with a circle around the RA zone in question. And in blue is the adjacent RB zone, and then there are some small zones to the north and to the west of the subject RA zone that are commercial, that are GI, LB, and GB, and around it. The third page is a display of what the proposed 6-unit townhouse would look like on this property. The next 9 pages are signatures of 9 abutters or neighbors who are in favor of the plan. I believe you may already have a copy of that because I think the applicant may have submitted it to the office. But these 9 abutters or neighbors are in favor of the proposal. And the last 2 pages of the material are letters from brokers attesting to the fact that there's no diminution in value. Now, this property is shown on the first page of the map as the property in orange, right in the middle. It's 28,000 square foot rectangular lot with 83 feet of frontage on Lake Street and 316 feet of depth, plus a 20 by 80 foot access to Fersen Street. It's surrounded by small single-family lots on both Fersen Street, Kingston Drive, and in the rear, Swan Street, with lot sizes that, of those abutting lots, ranging from 6,600 square feet to 10,000 square feet. Now, the neighborhood is made up of single-family and duplex lots with lot sizes that range from 6,000 square feet to as high as 13,000 square feet. But most of the duplex lots in the neighborhood, the ones shown in blue, have lot sizes that average around 9,000 square feet. Now, once again, on the first page of the material on the map, shows the single-family lots, duplex properties, 2 3-unit multifamily properties, 1 7-unit multifamily properties, and various commercial properties. The zoning district is an RA zone that's sandwiched between an RB zone, an LB zone, a GI zone, a GB zone, and a small piece of the R9 zone. This, draw your attention now to the second page, which is the zoning map. There are 3 RA zones in the city of Nashua, and they're shown in purple. There's the large RA zone in the north end, a fairly large RA zone in the south end, and this relatively small RA zone in the middle, where the subject property is. This RA zone, in the middle, is quite a bit different than the other 2 RA zones. For example, the RA zone at the north end is a transitions between lower density residential zones like R18 and R9 to RB and commercial. So it's a transition from low density to medium density to higher density to commercial. The one in the south end does pretty much the same thing. It transitions from lower density, R18s, R9s, to higher density, RB, RC, and commercial. This RA zone that the subject property is in is quite a bit different. It doesn't really transition from low density to high density. It's surrounded on more than 1/2 of its size, or sides, by an RB zone, which is a higher density zone that allows multifamily use pursuant to a conditional use permit. It's also surrounded by commercial. And then on the far left-hand side, it's borders on the highway. So it's not bordering on, except for a small segment of the R9 zone that touches maybe a couple of 100 feet of the RA zone, it's really not bordered by lower density to be a transition zone. It's bordered by zones that allow or fit in better with multifamily. Now, there's a history of multifamily variances in this zone. In 2002, a variance was granted for a 7-unit multifamily at 192 Kinsley Street. Going back to the first page, it's shown in purple on Kinsley Street with a number 7 on it. The property in that case is very similar to the one in this case. That property had approximately 23,000 square feet. It had 60 feet of frontage on Kinsley Street. It had 230 feet of depth. Now, in that case, in 2002, even though most of the abutters in the neighborhood objected at the hearing, this board determined that the multifamily use would not adversely affect property values, that it was not contrary to public interest, that it was within the spirit of the ordinance, and that it would serve substantial justice. That board, when I said this board, I didn't mean this same board, it was the board in 2002, determined that the zone was in a state of transition, and that was the basis of the hardship. The evidence of the transition was that there was an office building across the street, a bakery down the block, but all of the other properties around 192 Kinsley Street were single-family properties. This case and this property in this neighborhood is very similar. It's 28,000 square feet with 80 feet of frontage. There are commercial uses in the neighborhood, including a market to the east and an office building to the left, both of those shown as marked with C on the map. Now, to show you why I believe that this proposal is reasonable and should satisfy the requirements for a variance, I want to use as an example another way that this property could have been developed. When we first discussed this with my client, we looked at the possibility of subdividing this into 3 duplex lots. Now, the minimum lot size in an RA zone is 7,260 feet. The size of this lot would accommodate 3 lots. Of course, variances for frontage would have to be achieved and for minimum width, and a special exception would have to be achieved for a duplex lot, and variances for density would be necessary. Now, there is a similar property at 314 Lake Street, just down the street, with 3 lots with approximately 80 feet of frontage and 2 back lots, gaining access to Lake Street by a common driveway. So that's a similar property with minimum frontage, lot of depth, and was subdivided into 3 single-family lots. I propose that this lot could probably be developed the same way and could probably be developed into 3 duplex lots with a special exception. And with the significant number of duplex lots in the neighborhood, and the general lot size of these duplex lots being around 9,000 square feet, ending up with 3 duplex lots of 9,000 square feet would certainly fit within the neighborhood. However, rather than pursue that sort of development and the variances and special exceptions that would be needed, my client feels strongly that the same amount of units in a 6-unit townhouse would fit in better with the neighborhood. It could be developed with more green space, it could be developed with better off-street parking, and with buffers between the proposed building and adjacent properties. Now, the use variance for multifamily use and the density variance for minimum lot area both satisfy the 5 requirements for the approval. It will not be contrary to the public interest, and the spirit of the ordinance will be observed. The neighborhood has numerous duplexes of lots ranging from 6,000 to 13,000 square feet, with most of them at 9,000 square feet. The density proposed by the applicant is commensurate with the average density of the duplexes in the neighborhood. Now, when you consider whether or not a variance is contrary to the public interest or is with the spirit, or the spirit of the ordinance, the Supreme Court of New Hampshire addressed this in the case of Harborside versus Parade Residence Hotels. And in that case, it said that, a mere conflict with the ordinance is not enough to find that it's not within the spirit of the ordinance or it's contrary to the public interest. The fact that the ordinance doesn't allow the use and this is in conflict with that is not enough. The Supreme Court says in order to determine that it is not in the public interest or not compliant with the spirit of the ordinance, there must be a marked and there must be an unduly and in a marked degree conflict with the ordinance such that it would violate the basic zoning or objectives of the ordinance. So it's got to be quite a bit more than simply not allowed. I submit that 6 units maintaining the densities of the duplexes in the neighborhood and in the zone would not be unduly affecting or markedly affecting the spirit of the ordinance or be against the public interest. It wouldn't adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare or injure public or private rights. Substantial justice will be done because it'll allow the applicant and the owner of the property to make full use of the property to the extreme extent that the majority of the duplexes in the area make use of their property at the same average densities. There'll be no diminution in value of surrounding properties. Right now, the property is vacant and run down. It'll be developed into an attractive townhouse building, as shown on page 3 of the materials. And I've submitted in the materials 2 letters from local real estate brokers attesting to the fact that there'd be no diminution in value. Now, there's a special condition of this property that results in an unnecessary hardship, and that it's 28,000 square foot rectangular lot with only 83 feet of frontage and 316 feet of depth. There are very few, if any, other lots in the neighborhood that are similar. Now, to restrict this property to single-family or duplex use on 28,000 square feet would not be fair and reasonable. The proposed use as a single multifamily building of 6 units is, in fact, a reasonable use for this area, especially since the alternative method of development, which is subdividing it into 3 lots and obtaining variances and special exceptions for that, would reasonably achieve the same number of units, just spaced out, 2, 2, and 2, instead of 6 together. Now, my client has reached out to abutters, and many have supported this proposal. And in the materials, you have 9 letters from 9 of the abutters signing to show their support. That's the basis of our argument that it is compliant with the requirements of the variance, and glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of the applicant? Mr. Curry?
Well, I appreciate your quantitative analysis here with the duplexes and such. I guess I kind of focus on, I did some laps around the block that this is proposed on. And one thing that struck me was, I think almost all the homes that surround it, I think are single-story, and if
That's correct.
not much unlike the house I live in. But to me, I would think if I lived in one of those homes, kind of like the backyard, the kind of privacy of that is one of the attractions of the home. It's just me, I don't know. But see the proposed 3-story structure behind homes, all the existing homes. In my mind, that would very much be a change of character and would be a change. And I guess your 2 letters submitted, they don't address the specifics of that dynamic that concerns me. They're generic, which I don't disagree with the generic letter that says nice homes raise the value of the neighborhood, but I don't see that as addressing the impact on the homes right next to it. That's just my first thought, and I was wondering if you could
Well, I think that
talk
those
to me
letters
about that.
base their opinions on the proposed townhomes. And the letter of Donald Gingras, for example, talks about making his opinion on the proposed townhomes. I don't disagree with your, your opinion on 3 levels. The reason why it's proposed that way is so that there can be a garage on the first level to take care of more parking on the site. But if this board wanted to condition an approval that it would be no more than 2 stories, that is a condition that I think my client would really be willing to accept, because you're right, they're all single-story or 2-story buildings around there, and 3 stories might be too much. If we could cap it at 2 stories, that would be a reasonable condition.
Just a thought, okay, the other question I had is, if I have it right, the proposed access would strictly be off of, is it First and Ave? It wouldn't be off of Lake Street?
If we achieve the variance as requested, the next step would be to go to the planning board for site plan review. And the issue of where the better access for this property would be determined by the planning board at site plan review. We have access possible to Lake Street and access possible to Fersen Street. If the planning board felt that access to Fersen Street and exclusive access to Fersen Street was the only acceptable way to do it, that would be fine. But both points of access are possible, but I think the planning board at site plan review, determining traffic counts and things like that would probably be better apt to make the decision as to where the access should be.
Well, I guess the reason I was wondering about the proposed access was, in my mind, if it were all off of Fersen Street, what would perhaps otherwise be a driveway would almost become as busy as a street. I mean, servicing all the units. It does seem that one of the letters of support is from an abutter on that proposed potential driveway. So,
Right.
that's a note I make, but, well, it's just a concern that, about traffic all coming in, if it were coming in and out of there. Guess I'm not looking for an answer, I'm just,
Well, if you wanted to make a condition on that, I would suggest that it's probably, don't tie the hands of the planning board in deciding what's the best access for site plan review purposes.
that's all I had at the moment.
Any other questions for the applicant? Just to review again, alternative, you had talked about some of the things that you could have done, right? So just review that again, what your thoughts were.
Well, when I looked at it, I said 28,000 square feet. You've got minimum lot size of 7,260 feet. Based upon that square footage, this could, with appropriate variances for dimensional requirements, this could be subdivided into 3 lots. Very similar to the property at 314 Lake Street, which is just down the street in the same zone, where there's a lot in front and 2 lots behind it that are accessed by a common driveway. That lot was a big rectangle with limited frontage, just like this lot. So looking at developing it that way, and then developing those 3 lots as duplex lots, which are permitted by special exception in the RA zone, I felt that a reasonable, and a very reasonable approach to developing this would be 3 duplex lots through a subdivision. However, both the applicant and myself felt that rather than have 3 duplex lots back to back in the middle of that property, in the middle of that block, a better development scheme would be 6-unit townhouse. It would provide for more green space. It would provide for better off-street parking. It would provide for better buffering. And it would provide for site plan review by the planning board to determine that all of those factors are done in the best possible way. Whereas if it were done as 3 separate duplex lots, the planning board doesn't have site plan jurisdiction over that. It does have subdivision jurisdiction, but how the lots are built is not part of the subdivision part of it. It's only part of the site plan review. So by doing a 6-unit townhouse, it provides for another method of oversight by a board in Nashua to make sure that it's done in the best way that fits in the neighborhood.
And I'll just ask, just because I need to ask, was there any other considerations for reasonable use of the property when looking at it, in your estimation?
Well, what we looked at is what could 28,000 square feet be reasonably used as to fit in with the neighborhood as far as the average densities. And 3 lots was what we came up with. I mean, certainly you could do 2 lots, you could do no lots, but it would not be reasonable to restrict that to just 1 lot or 2 lots because of the lot sizes in the neighborhood and the densities of the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Mr.
I
Correa?
just wanted to ask maybe similar to what you asked, but in a different way. If you stayed with the multi-family unit building approach and you maintained the code of 28,039 square feet, how many units would that end up being?
3.8 something.
Okay. And another question, there was a lot of mention in the application about the rundown condition of the house. I was just wondering, is that house terminally run down? Did an owner fall on hard times?
It's been vacant for 2 years, and the proposal will be to raise it.
Okay, and
I
how
can't
long?
tell you what it's like inside, I haven't been inside, but the fact that the applicant intends to tear it down tells me that it's pretty sorry shape.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience would like to speak in favor of this application?
Do you want to read those letters or mention
yes.
those?
Same letter to sign by different people.
So I'll read a letter that was sent to abutters. This is for a letter that was letters for abutters approval. So 324 Lake Street. The purpose of this document is to reach out and get abutters' opinion on the proposed building plan for 324 Lake Street, Nashua. Our goal is to demolish the vacant, dilapidated structure currently existing at 324 Lake Street. We intend to build 6 modest-sized attached townhomes on approximately 1,100 to 1,300 square feet. Based on our research, we believe this project will improve the surrounding property values and bring life back to that existing lot that has been vacant for several years. We have applied to the National Zoning Board for a variance to allow this project to proceed. By signing this form, you state that you agree to the proposed plans as mentioned above and do not oppose this project. You authorize us to present this form to the zoning board to show that you do not oppose the variance. I will read the addresses, some of the signatures I cannot understand, but I'll just read off the addresses that these come from. So 8 Kingston Drive, 15 Kingston Drive, 328 Lake Street, 21 Fearson Street. Okay, so it may be 325, and I apologize, okay? So again, it's 325, and that's been affirmed by the applicant. So I apologize, sir. It looked like an 8. It's a little tough. So 325 Lake Street, so I take that back. So 325 Lake Street, not 328. 21 Fearson Street, 16 Fearson Street. Excuse me. I'm just reading these into the record, and I apologize. This is from rules that we have to follow. I will be calling for all those in opposition. So if you have any concerns or questions, you'll have the chance to come up, and we can correct anything. So this will be on the record. I am just reading off the addresses of the letters. There was a correction on an address. I appreciate that. You can come and testify when you come up to what may have been misunderstood in the letter. We'll take that testimony from you at that time. So I do apologize, but we're just following our rules for testimony. So 16 Fairson Street, 2 Kingston, this one here, 12 Fearson is what we believe this is, 20 Fearson Street, 18 Fearson Street. Those are all folks from the addresses that signed this letter that I just read into the record. Okay, so with that.
You want to read the 2 letters from the real estate agents?
Yes. Where are those letters from real estate agents? So we have 2 letters from the real estate agents that was part of the record, but I'll read into the record for all those who have not heard this or seen this. This is from Cameron Real Estate, broker price opinion, prepared by Matthew Lavery, April 5th, 2019. Prepared for Michael LaFavor with Echo Development regarding the property 324 Lake Street. It says, based on my research and experience over 7 years in the real estate industry, I present a broker's price opinion on the current property at the above-mentioned location and what the proposed project will be. My opinion is as follows. The existing property has been vacant for roughly 2 years and is in quote-unquote tear-down condition. This property is currently an eyesore for the community and diminishing the values of the surrounding area. The proposed project would be to demolish the existing building and use the land to build 6 new attached townhomes. Based on the lot configuration, this appears to be the best use of the property. New construction will help increase the surrounding property values in the area. This project would not have any negative effect on the values of the properties in the area. Signed, Matthew Lavery. The next one is from Douglas Gringus Realty Company, broker price opinion, again on the property 324 Lake Street. The proposed project of 324 Lake Street will be constructing 6 attached townhouses with garage under. The proposed townhomes will be roughly 1,200 to 1,300 square feet. From my research, including comparable sales of similar condos, townhouses in Nashua, in the area, have determined the average sale of these units will range from $250,000 to $275,000. Based on my research and reviewing the conceptual plans, this project would not negatively impact the community or the values of the surrounding properties. Demolishing the existing structure that has been vacant for some time and rebuilding a townhouse-like structure fitting to the area would result in an increase of the values in the surrounding area. Prepared by Douglas Gringus on 4/1/2019. So those are the 2 real estate records. Am I missing anything? Okay, so let's just review the rules as we move forward. I will be calling for those with questions, concerns, or opposition. You'll each have 5 minutes to come up and testify. You'll address your questions or concerns to this board. Again, if you agree with something that was said, you could say so, or you can tell us what you want. You have 5 minutes freely to testify. When we're done all that testimony, the applicant will come back and have 5 minutes to address those concerns or issues that you have brought up. When the applicant is finished, you all have an opportunity, only one person can represent you, but you have an opportunity for 5 minutes to come back in rebuttal of that, of any discussion. I will certainly give you time, if you need to figure out, I can give you 5 minutes or whatever to figure out who wants to speak, what you want to say, that's okay. I can give that to you if you need that. I'd be more than happy to do that. At that point, the hearing will be closed, and then we'll have the public meeting. And just so we understand, again, the rules are that there is no public testimony. We won't accept any, and any comments from the audience is not allowed at that time. So I just want you to understand that. Those are our rules, and again, we'll follow those as we do with every case. Mr. Lino.
I believe you will still want to ask if there's anybody in support of the proposal. You haven't done that yet.
Yeah, I did. I think there was nobody else left.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I was
My
gonna move into this,
apologies.
but thank you, Mr. Lino. All right, so with that, is there any, before I move forward, is there any questions, not regarding the case, but any questions on the process? Okay, thank you. So I'll move forward now. So there was no more people that want to speak in favor of the application. There's nobody here that's raising their hand coming up. So now I'll move forward with anybody with questions, concerns, or oppositions. You can come on up. I'll ask you to come up one at a time. Give us your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Bergeron. I live at 5 Kingston Drive. On this proposal, it is out of character with this neighborhood. The duplexes, the single-family homes are all 2 stories at the most. This is 3.5 stories high, this is gonna be. There are no buildings in this neighborhood that are 3.5 stories high. There's an office park at the end of Lake Street with a dentist and doctor's office, and that is 2 stories. The only 3-story building is Bishop Girton down the end of Lake Street, Lund. So to say it's not out of character, it is out of character. Another thing is, as you know, the lot is long, but it's not wide. So to get around vehicles that are parked in front of this garage, this building is gonna have to be set way to the left of this property to give you space to get by. So I don't know, I didn't see the plans, I don't know what it is, but it is gonna be jammed to the left side of that property. It has to be, it's not wide enough to get around vehicles. And for the off-street parking, he's gonna have to tear down every shrub and every tree on that lot. And I have a birch tree, the main branch goes off over this property. It's never been an issue because it's a vacant lot, but I'm sure that's gonna be cut as soon as it gets there, as soon as they start with the construction. The other thing is, in certain times of the year, like spring's coming up now, I have water problems. The ground gets soggy, and I have neighbors that have the same issue with water. And this land is a vacant lot. It perks now, and we still have water trouble. So if you, because it's not big enough to put this property on, so if you hot top the whole thing for parking, put this building on, they're gonna grade that land away from that building to all our property, because we're in a circle. So it's all gonna go away. They're gonna grade it all to our land, and I already have water issues. I've actually added loom to raise it up a little bit for that problem. So that's an issue there. And then he talks about, well, the neighborhood's full of duplexes and single families. It is, but all those duplexes were built at the same time about 40 years ago. So people bought these houses, and they were there. I bought my house. My house is a raised ranch or a split. There's nothing special about a split. They're all exactly the same. They either go right or left. When I went in the backyard, it had an in-ground pool, it had trees, and there was nothing there. So that's what I sold the house on, because I downsized. I had a huge house, and I bought this one. Small yard, privacy. Now, you live in a neighborhood, you don't have total privacy, but there's 10 houses in this circle, and 9 of those houses have fences, and they're 6-foot fences, and they're for privacy, as much as you can get in a neighborhood. This proposal, the decks on these houses are gonna be 9 feet tall. They're gonna be over the first floor. So those 6-foot fences are completely useless. And even if you had the fence, when you're on the 3rd floor, I don't care what kind of fence you got, you're getting, so the little bit of privacy you got is going down to 0. And there's nothing they can do to buffer that, to get that privacy back. So that's that issue. Then the other issue is with plowing. They're gonna plow this whole, this is a street. From Lake Street to the back of this property, it's a street. So the people on the right side are gonna have a street in front of them, Fairson, and they're gonna have a street in their backyard. And when you plow, they're not gonna plow it up to Lake Street, they're gonna plow it all the way down the end, and it's gonna stay there until it all melts, and then we have water issues again. So this, I don't understand how this can work. You know, it's just, there's too much. You know, and then the other issue is on, I forget, it was a couple years back, on Liberty and Kingston. There's a store there. They put 4 condo units there. I don't know if you remember that. They put a 3rd floor on that. The city made them tear that down because they wouldn't allow them 3 levels there. So I don't understand, it doesn't work one street over, so I don't see how it can work here, you know? And I got the runoff, and you can't say the property values are gonna not go down. If every house in that circle faces that center, when you walk through that gate in that backyard, you're gonna look at a 3.5-story building staring at you, blocking, and every house on Kingston and Fairson, they face east and west. So the sun comes up behind, so they're not getting on that side, and as soon as it starts going down on that side, you ain't getting it on my side. It's gonna be blocked out by a 3.5-story building. And it's not like the building is gonna be set back. On my side, it's gonna be as close as they can get it. There's a complex down, if he wants to use examples, on Lake Street past Elm, they put up 2 rows of condos. Those decks are even with the property line. And they're 9 feet up, and the fence is there, and the deck is right there. So I don't know how he's gonna fit buffering, whatever he wants to use. In between, he's not gonna have any room. It's gonna be jammed over so far, and he can't buffer on this side. It's gonna be hot top from the building to the property line for
Sir.
parking and to get by.
Sorry, your time's up. If you
Thank
could just
you.
wrap up, but hold on for a minute, because we're gonna probably have some questions for you. Any questions to the applicant, for this gentleman?
No, not for me.
And again, it's not where I'm at right now, but just so you know, one of the things you talked about was the water issue and stuff. This site plan would require that they keep all their runoff on the property. That's one of the things that would have to happen here. So that would be done at the planning board level if it were to get there. So I
Right.
just want you to be aware of that, and I'm sure that the applicant will probably testify to that again, but just so you know that. Your comment was, what's your just gut feeling about a 2-story instead of a 3-story?
Well, it's not so much, the problem is still, it's gonna be jammed to the side. Doesn't matter the height. They don't have the width to do this. That's the problem. Because no matter what they build, they still need to drive by it, and they still need parking in front of it. So you figure, it's 80, if a building is 24, 12-foot, 2 rooms, the kitchen, the way townhouses are set up, 24, a car's 15 feet, you gotta get around the car, so, it can't be over anyway. They need all that to get by. So it doesn't matter the height, which it actually does, that does too, but, you know what I mean? There's no way it's gonna be, so the people I'm assuming that's how it's gonna go. I haven't seen anything. I'm assuming they're gonna drive in on the right side, and it's gonna be on the left. So it's gonna be jammed over as far as they can get it, There's gonna be no setback. That's why they're here. I don't know what the setback is for a building, I'm not into this stuff, but I don't know what it is.
Setback for that zone.
25 front, 10 side, 25 rear.
So it's 10 would be 10, would be,
So they,
they can be 10
technically,
feet.
they need 50 feet, you know, just for the setbacks, you know?
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. And just to clarify, just so I can help the audience, so you know, this clock starts to count down. When it gets to the last minute, the light changes and it shows you the last minute. And again, we only do that so that it's reasonable, our meeting times and stuff. So again, just be aware of that, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Your name and address, please? And you can
It's
pull
Nettie
the,
Raby.
pull the mic down maybe a little bit, just down. Thank you. That's good.
My name is Nettie Raby. I live at 322 Lake Street. Whatever they build is going to be right up against my house. I really agree with what the man said prior to me. But I can't see, when I bought my home, I bought it because I was told that all back lots in that area were grandfathered and could not be built on, so that I could have a large backyard for my children and my grandchildren to play in without having a lot of people staring and seeing what's going on, have that privacy. I don't understand how they could put a building so close to mine, brand new. I understand that the house that's there now is fairly close to my house, but that's because it was there prior to. But to build brand new 6 units right next to my house and have really nothing, I mean, what, a small alley, little walkway between my house and these new 6 units? It's just, it's not right. I don't have anything else to say.
Any questions for? Nope. All right,
Thank
thank you,
you.
ma'am. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is Kenneth Harvey. I live at 7 Kingston Drive.
17 Kingston?
7.
7 Kingston, thank you.
I agree with my neighbor who just spoke a lot up here, but I will say these guys are saying there's duplexes around this area. Yes, there is duplexes. It's at the end of Kingston Drive. It's on Major Drive. It's not in that one little section that they're trying to build a 6-family condo. It's all single-family homes. I think there's one 2-story home, and the rest are split-level ranches all the way around this thing. So you're gonna put a 6-unit duplex in our backyard. So just say, I'm looking to sell my house. I'll tell you right now, if this goes in, I will be selling my house. But how am I gonna get what I want when people are gonna walk in my backyard and that's what they're gonna see? They don't want that. I don't want that. I have 3 young kids. I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 4-year-old that play in my backyard. They're gonna have 0 privacy now with these people in the backyard, on their decks. They can go on their decks, because if it's gonna be there, they're able to go on their decks. But now they're gonna be looking over our fences into our backyards where my kids are gonna be swimming in a pool. I have dogs. They're gonna be going crazy all the time now because there's always gonna be moving back there because it's a 6-family duplex. The privacy is, I don't understand this whole minimum lot sizes needs 43,560 square feet required, 28,039 square feet existing. How are they gonna build something that big in that area when there's not even 43,560 square feet? That's my problem. I don't wanna be looking out my back door. Right now, I'm looking out my back door, I have trees. During the spring and summer, those things bloom. I have a lot of shade. I have a pool there that I put up every year so my kids can go swimming. I'm not gonna put up a pool anymore. There's no privacy for those kids to be in that pool. It's just, I don't agree with it. I don't want something right butt up against my property. If you guys are saying it's supposed to be 25 feet back, then you're gonna be on the Fearson side property, there's just no room. I don't get where all this room is coming from to build this duplex or this six-family condo. My parents live in a condo. I see what size it is. It just shove that in that little area is ridiculous. That's all I got.
Any questions for the applicant?
Just to clarify, you say you're at 7 Kingston?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, I was just looking on the map here to see where your house is. All right, thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm right butt up against that's in my backyard.
So why we're here is, if that lot was the 48,000 and change, they wouldn't have to come in front of us. They could go ahead
Correct.
and build that property, obviously, because the property could handle it. And again, the reason why the zoning board is, I'm sorry, that's incorrect, but they would have to come for a special expense.
That's just the amount of land they would
Yeah,
need
the
for
amount of land
these
they would use,
units.
and I'm sorry.
So the use.
I was making some assumptions that some things were to get done already. So, and again, we're here, obviously, because they have the right to request something that's not allowed, right? So this is why the zoning board exists, and we're
Roger.
here to
I
decide that.
understand.
And, you know, we're all citizens of Nashua that serve on this board, you know, and we're here to, you know, it's all, we look at the cases and we decide, you know, we speak and then we decide amongst ourselves. So, again, this is not the last stop. Like I told folks before, if there's something that you feel is unjust, you have the right to, there's an appeal process first to this board, and then if that doesn't work out and you're not happy with it, and then to the Supreme Court. But there is a process in place. And again, I would say to everybody, at the end of this evening, if either party is not happy with the outcome, there is a process to follow, and you can talk to Mr. Falk tomorrow about it. Okay?
Roger.
All right, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Hi, my name's John Pugliafico. I live at 328 Lake Street. My driveway actually is on Fersen Street, so when I look out my driveway, I'm looking at that empty lot. I see it all the time. I see the trucks and stuff that go in and out of there all the time. I definitely think that's gonna be out of character with the neighborhood. If you look at the size of the building, the length of it, it is longer than most of the properties are in length. Never mind the width or anything, but it's just the building alone is bigger than most of the lots in the area. It's like about 140 feet long, just the building alone. And as they stated, most of the properties are around 100, 125 feet. The building size is gonna be huge. It's just, everything in the area, as other people have said, all single families, got duplexes down the end of Fersen, duplexes down the end of Lake Street. That corner there, the only building in that immediate neighborhood that is not a single family is the one on the corner of Fersen and Lake Street, and that's because it's a single family that was kind of converted into two. I think it's 327, if I'm not mistaken. Trying to think. The land use, I mean, 65% is what they're asking for. Looking for 65% of the land they need to put 6 units. I mean, that's not right to do something like that. Comment on one of the letters you had. You said you had one from 12 Fersen Street. I was talking with them yesterday. I get a feeling they don't know what they signed. Because, you know, I know my opinion doesn't matter on that, but I was surprised they weren't here tonight because I was talking with them just yesterday, and they were not for this at all. Character building. I mean, they've talked about the driveway, where it's gonna come out or not. That 20-foot wide driveway, when you got, I think they had to have parking for 9.5 cars. That's a lot of cars coming out between two little pieces of property. 3 stories from a person. And there was another thing with the, just on the variant signs. There were 2 different variant signs placed up for this. The one on Lake Street, I guess, said for this piece of property. The one on Fersen Street said for the Fairmont piece of property that you had in the last case. It did not say the correct one, because I have a picture of it. Or actually, I might even have, took a picture of the one on Fersen Street, and it was the wrong sign. That's all. Thank you.
Is there any questions? Thank you, sir, for coming. Come on up, sir.
How you doing? Keith Vandaka, 16 Ferguson Street.
Excuse me, could you give me your last name again and your address?
You want me to spell it?
Yes, please.
F as in Frank, I-A-N, D as in David, A-C-A.
And the address again?
16 Ferguson Street.
Thank you.
Can I go? All right, so, I think Mr. Jenkins, I guess he did a tour of the neighborhood and visited homes, to get those signatures. I wasn't home when he came to my house, and, my wife signed it, so we'd like to strike that from the record.
It's on the rec-
Also.
It's on the record what you just said, so.
Okay.
yeah.
So also, when he was going over the layout with her, that driveway area that's next to my house on Ferguson Street, I think Mr. Currier brought it up a minute ago. He told my wife that the access was gonna be on Lake Street and that he was gonna split that little egress between me and my neighbor who has the garden, I'm not sure of his name, if the town would allow, and that there would be no way that they were gonna put access on Ferguson Street. So, you know, that's part of the reason why she signed. She thought it'd be a great idea. She was so happy to tell me until I told her what we'd be dealing with. You brought up to the gentleman about if you made it 2 stories, right? So the first story is gonna be a garage, so that would mean they would need more parking. They already don't have the width, so that would mean 2 cars per, at minimum 2 cars per for parking spots, and they already don't have the width, so that's not gonna work. It's all good, the irrigation. I've been in this business, I was 15 building. The irrigation's good and all that stuff, but when we already have water problems, it's not gonna solve it. Pitching it towards the property, no matter what you do, until you solve every problem, it's just gonna make the problem bigger. That will never work. I bought my home about 16 months ago, 18 months ago. I never would have bought my home if there was a 3-story gargantuanly ridiculous-looking thing in the backyard. I have 5 kids. I have 3 dogs. I have a pool. So if we have a deck at 10 feet, and I have kids ranging from 16 to 2, they're going to be playing in the pool with God knows what, no privacy. I really think that's it. But yeah, that's it.
Good. Any questions?
No?
Thank you, sir, for
All
coming.
right.
Anybody else like to speak with questions, concerns, or opposition? Okay, seeing none. Sir, if you could, welcome back for 5 minutes.
For the record, Jeffrey Zoll, attorney at 221 Main Street in Nashua. The 3-story, we're not asking for a variance for a 3-story building. The design was just a concept plan. I agree with Mr. Currier, and I agree with every one of the abutters who got up here and said 3 stories is gargantuan. I would suggest that if this board were amenable to granting the variances, that a condition be placed on it that it'll be no more than 2 stories, which would fit in better with the neighborhood. As far as the issues on water issues, drainage issues, snow plowing issues, those are issues that'll be addressed at the planning board on site plan review, and Nashua ordinances have regulations that prohibit the runoff of water onto other lots, so the applicant will have to prove to the planning board that all the water runoff remains on the property and does not drain onto other properties. The argument that the building would be smack up against the property lines and is really not the case, Nashua has setback requirements that will have to be adhered to in order to get building permits and occupancy permits and site plan review. The setbacks from abutting properties will be adhered to. The proposed design had a building of approximately 30 feet in depth. At 30 feet in depth, there would be 26 feet on each side, which is more than enough area to satisfy the setback requirements, because I think the setback requirements are about 10 or 15 feet, Carter, if I'm correct?
25 front, 10 side,
10
25
side.
rear.
So they got 10-foot side yard setbacks. There's there'll be at least, with a 30-foot deep building, there'll be at least 26 feet on each side, which is more than enough to provide for decks, to satisfy the setbacks, so that they won't be up against the neighbor's property and will still be able to provide them privacy. With a two-story building, the decks are not gonna be up here. The decks are gonna be down here, the same level of the decks of the abutting properties, if they have decks. The variance sign, we realized shortly after the signs were put up that the office gave us the wrong sign. My secretary was on a noonday walk up on Fairmont Street and saw the sign on Fairmont Street that said it was a variance for Lake Street. And she quickly called me, and I sent Mr. LaFever over there to take a look, and sure enough, the signs were wrong, so he moved them. And this was, last Wednesday, and put the signs back where they belong. So they were on the property well within the 5-day requirement prior to the meeting, and the correct signs. Abutters would like to see vacant lots in their backyard, because it's nice, but not to the extent where it deprives a landowner a reasonable use of his or her land. It's nice to have backyards that are next to open spaces where your kids can play, but not at the expense of depriving somebody of their constitutional rights to make use of their property in a reasonable manner. And I submit that a two-story building would be a very reasonable manner. Thanks.
So just to reiterate that, the two-story building, I think Mr. Carter said it's allowed a 2.5-story, but that's with the roof, right? So the decks would still be at that 8 or 9 foot level, whatever the walkout level is of the floor above the garage, correct?
Well, no, I mean, there'd be 2 levels, including the garage. I mean, it's not the garage and then 2 stories above it.
No, I understand that, but the garage would take up the whole bottom, the first level.
Well, they'd have to be redesigned so that the garages may not be on the first level. The garages may be on the sides. If there's not gonna be 2 levels above a garage, and you really need 2 levels for the size of the townhouses that they wanna build, the garages may not be underneath. The garages may be off to the side, so that the decks that would come off the first floor would be like decks coming off any normal first 1 or 2-story residence.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Currier?
Just wanted to clarify, first while Mr. Zoll's at the mic, what's the rear yard setback for these homes that surround this? Is it 25 feet?
25 feet.
And then if this proposal were built along the sides of this long lot, is that considered the side yard setback or the rear yard setback?
Those would be considered sides.
Okay, so while the existing homes on the street have a 25-foot setback to their backyard.
Right.
If this went in as proposed, then there's a 10-foot side yard setback on the other side, say I just wanted to make sure that would be a side yard setback, not a rear yard setback of 25 feet.
Well, there's a few different scenarios in this block. If we can go clockwise, if you look at this map, 322 Lake Street, this would be side to side.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? 5 and 7, it would be their rear to this applicant's side.
Mm-hmm.
9 is not in a butter. 4, it's rear to rear. 20 is not in a butter. 18 is rear to side. 16 is gonna be their rear to the applicant's side. And 12, it's gonna be, that's a corner lot, so they have 2 sides facing this property.
Okay.
So they're all a little bit different based on if they have a corner lot or something.
And then a question for Attorney Zoll is, this structure, is it proposed to be centered or on the left or the right, as we've heard, or is it up in the air?
It's up in the air, and that would be addressed at site plan review as the best place to situate the structure on the lot. And I'm sure that the abutters testifying and speaking at the site plan review would urge the board to site it in the best possible place so it's in the middle and has the least effect on the abutters. So, you know, in answer to your question, the only logical place is right smack dab in the middle, because there's enough width, at 83 feet of width, to accommodate a 24 to 30-foot deep building. Now, I only said 30 feet before because the original proposal concept plan, when it was 3 stories, had 30 feet of depth. But if it's going to be 2 stories, it's going to be a smaller structure, it can probably be built at 24 feet in depth. 24 feet is not unreasonable for a house. Well, a lot of houses are 24 feet deep. So at 24 feet deep, now you've got 30 feet on each side, so even more room to buffer.
So when we see this rendering that you gave us tonight.
Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry, I apologize. We can hear everything you're saying. It's just the acoustics in this room. So, if you need to talk, I'd ask you to step outside, but again, I apologize. Thank you.
So this rendering we have with the garage doors here, is that like one side, is that the front side, or are there garage doors on both sides?
No, that would have been the front side.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to understand that. I'm
But
all
keeping
set.
in mind that in order to accommodate the overwhelming concerns of the abutters, it will be reduced in scope, and I think the garages probably won't be under, but off to the side, because there's plenty of depth in there to accommodate that.
Okay.
So, just following up with that, if I was facing the building with all the garages,
Yep.
the building would end up being a little longer?
Yeah.
Wider?
Yeah.
With getting the building down lower?
Right. And I think that would be a better way of situating it on the lot, because you've got so much depth.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you,
Thank
Attorney
you.
Zoll, appreciate it. So you gentlemen have, gentlemen and lady, you have an opportunity to come back. One of you want to come back. If you need a few minutes to talk about or decide, let me know if you need a few minutes. I can certainly wait. Oh, we have a volunteer here. So,
Guess he's the one.
so sir, you'll have 5 minutes.
I'll take less than 5.
That's okay.
Kevin Bergeron, 5 Kingston Drive. The problem with lowering it is the parking they were talking about, they lose. So now, there's gonna have to be hot top even more, and more building covering this space. So the more green space they're talking about now is even less, the beautification that they caught. So, and then with the drainage, behind this unit, it's gonna be grass that they're gonna grade. So I don't understand how they're gonna grade grass to wick away the water from our properties. Because it's a unique property, it's gonna be put, it's not in my backyard, it's gonna be in all our backyards in one shot. You know, so the quality of life and the privacy is gone. And no matter what they do, you're not getting it back, because it's in the middle. If I wanted to sell this house, no one's gonna buy this house. I wouldn't have bought this house because of this. The duplexes were there. When people bought their houses, they were there. When we bought this house, there was nothing. And when he says, well, they have a right to use the property, they do, but they don't have enough property to use it for what they want. So they do have a right to use their property, but in this situation, they don't have enough property. So that's why we're here. But other than that, I don't know. I just think the problem with cutting down the garage, it doesn't solve anything. It makes it actually worse. Now there's gonna be more structure and more blacktop, you know, and it's gonna be a road. I mean, this, except for one house at the end that's on Swan, this property is gonna be as long as the streets. Kingston and Fairson go down to Swan, except for one house, so is this. This is gonna be as long, you know? No one has a street in their backyard, behind the house. Everyone has, that's why there's no fences in people's front yards, because they go in the backyard to get away from the streets. This is gonna put a street in your backyard, you know? That's why I don't think it can work.
I have a question for you, and it's just, it may have nothing to do with it, I just want to see where kind of, you're representing the folks here, and I just kind of,
Right.
for myself. Let's say they're just going to knock down the house in the front, and they're gonna build this brand-new, beautiful house. They're gonna build a really large house within the boundaries, within all the code.
Right.
And they could go up to 10 feet, and they put in this huge colonial with 3-car garage and all
Right,
that, right?
right.
They put that there, same idea, they're gonna have, this house is gonna have this beautiful deck off the back, and, you know, it's gonna be this 2.5-story home. Do you see that, and again, I'm not saying that that's what they should do, I'm
No,
just
that's
saying.
fine. Yeah, I get it.
As an abutter, as a neighbor that's looking out your backyard, and the house could be positioned right behind yours, smack dab, 2.5 stories right there, or whatever, how do you feel about that?
Well, that's different because that's one family. This is 6 families moving into this. And don't think for a minute that those garages can't be converted to bedrooms to have more people with cars living there, because I've seen that done. They can convert it to more bedrooms. And it's one family, and this isn't the end of this. Something is going there. This is probably Plan A, but he's coming back with Plan B. So there's gonna be something there. So if it has to be a single-family house, you know what I mean? Because it's already started, you know, the cat's out of the bag. Something's going there. Plan B, Plan C, but something's going there.
I was just asking as far as structure, you know.
I get it.
What you could actually have in that lot, you
Yeah,
know.
I get it. But that's one family that we have to deal with, not 6 families, 12 cars.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any other questions? All right, that ends our process. I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Any thoughts? Mr. Minkara.
Might as well kick it off.
And again, Ms. Boris, it will be voting, but Mr. Minkara, I welcome your opinions.
In you know, looking at this property, it clearly is oversized for the area. It does have an unusual shape, and certainly, well, I shouldn't say certainly, but I would imagine some sort of relief may be in order. But I don't get to a 6-unit multifamily building. And I'll start with the spirit of the ordinance, because to me, a place I do like to start is what the ordinance says its purpose is. This is, you know, the RA zone, and it says, this district is appropriate for older residential sections of Nashua surrounding the urban core. RA is predominantly single-family, although duplexes are allowed subject to special standards. Multifamily is not allowed in this use. It's not this district, it's not contemplated in this district. This district is predominantly single-family. Duplexes are allowed by special exception. The notion that somehow the alternative use to this property is 3 duplexes with multiple variances and special exceptions, I don't think is reasonable. It's perhaps there could be a proposal that could come here, but it's not, we're gonna come in with a different variance request and a special exception, or we're gonna get this. The or is, this is a neighborhood of predominantly single-family homes, and that's what this zone contemplates, and in fact, this property is surrounded by single-family homes. So it's not in the character of the area. I think the relief that's being sought is excessive. The density is excessive. And I think the impact to the area, it is dramatic. When you have single-family homes, to put in the middle of them, completely surrounded by single-family homes, to put right in the middle of that a 6-unit building, I think it is seeking relief that's far beyond what's justified. So I don't see that it's in the spirit of the ordinance. I don't see that it meets the hardship criteria.
Thank you. Mr. Lionel.
I certainly could not say it any better than Mr. Moncara said, but he very eloquently expressed my reservations about this proposal. I don't think it meets the spirit and intent of the ordinance. I absolutely believe it will adversely affect the property values of surrounding parcels, as multiple abutters have stated. They believe that it would be difficult to sell their homes with a large building in their basically in their backyards, visible from their backyards. I agree with that. I certainly wouldn't want to buy a house with something like that in the visible from the backyard. I don't think this is a reasonable use of that property, given the neighborhood, this being surrounded by single-family homes. That there are duplexes farther away is to me not, and duplexes is not what's being asked for here, so I cannot support this.
Thank you. Mr. Correa?
I too, while I concur in general with the comments that we've heard from the two folks here, I also throw in that I agree it's certainly an unusual shaped property, and perhaps some relief somewhere along the line is warranted, but I think that this is far in excess of reasonable. You know, I don't think I ever traveled, certainly I've been on Fersen Street, but the other street I hadn't traveled on, and my hunch from like a 5-minute walk down Kingston Drive was what I'm hearing in, you know, with Clarion from the folks there, that this is out of character of the neighborhood. That was my assessment, and I don't like to put too much credence in that because I don't live there, but that's what I'm hearing from all the folks here. And so I don't think it's within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. And even just speaking to like the potential scaled down 2-story, I mean, we don't have any information in front of us tonight as to how that would impact, and I think the board would be remiss if it were to consider, well, let's just put a stipulation that it's 2-story. We have a plan before us. The plan is 3-story, and the overage request is a great amount. I don't think it's within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. I concur with my colleagues that I think it would negatively affect the property values of the surrounding parcels, and when we use the word surrounding here, to me that's surrounding. That is literally the homes that surround this. And again, I think those the letters we have in support speak to the general neighborhood and not these folks who have their backyard really impacted. I think it's contrary to public interest. I think the property owner has plenty of development opportunity, and by not granting this variance, I don't think we hinder that. There's still plenty of development opportunity there. So I'm not in favor of this either, and that's where I stand.
Ms. McKay?
I concur with my fellow board members. I want to actually thank Mr. Minkara for reading what you read. It gives clarity and concreteness to emotion or reaction to what you hear. So it lets you know that your thought processes are running to actual data. When the gentleman at 7 Kingston Drive spoke, and he spoke about the pool and the privacy issues in his children, I wrote down quality of life changes, because that was the impact that I was feeling. This would be a huge quality of life change. And where most of these properties are going to have their backyards affected, it's based on what Mr. Falk read, all side setbacks. So this is 10 foot, a buffer zone on one side, where when we look out our homes and we see our rear, we're thinking 50, but they're not going to benefit from that 50. The other side of the coin is it is so tall and so out of character These are all single families. And this would be this behemoth of a building set in what I try to visualize as my backyard, and I can't comprehend it. I just cannot support the scope and the impact that this would have on a neighborhood's home values, quality of life, environment. I just can't. I can't support this. I'm done.
Thank you. Ms. Boris?
Well, well said by all my colleagues. I agree, and I'm also not in support.
Obviously, not obviously, I do agree, and I could have said it more better, that I think there is plenty of opportunity for other avenues at this property. I can appreciate, wanting to do this, but again, I think for all the reasons said, I think the impact, and I don't think it is in the spirit and intent of this ordinance for what it's written for. I think it's just too impactful for the neighborhood. Again, I do agree, there is duplexes down the street, there is lots of duplexes off of Lund Road. I mean, that whole area is lots of duplexes, but I don't think that, again, that we're talking about the same thing with the way they're set up, So I will be in support of denying the application as it sits.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
of you? When it comes to making the motion, is this one or two? Because it's a land use and an area use. And I'm asking the question because I have to document this, and I want to do it accurately.
I think in this case, we should take it, make it two separate motions for clarity.
Yep.
Is there anybody who wants to make a motion? Mr. Currier?
And are you going to do, what doesn't matter?
Well, I'll tee up the first variance, which is the use variance.
Use, okay.
Number one.
So when Ms. McKay is in the use variance spot in her form, I will say that I'm making a motion on behalf of Richard and Patricia Jennings to deny the request of a use variance from Land Use Code Section 190-15. Again, that's Table 15-1, number 15, and the request before us tonight is to allow a 6-unit multifamily building. That's the use variance request. And again, I'm making a motion to deny this request. And I make a motion to deny because, or I think the board agrees with me, but I believe that the variance is not needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property. I think that the property could be used as is or developed in other fashions, given the special conditions of the property that do not require a use variance to allow a 6-unit multifamily building. I also make the motion to deny because I don't think the use variance for a 6-unit multifamily is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance, given how this property is situated with single-family homes around it. I think that it will adversely affect the property values of the surrounding parcels, particularly the ones that immediately surround it. I feel that the multi-family building is contrary to public interest, and substantial justice is not served by this approval. I think and that's why I make a motion to deny the use variance.
Is seconded by Mr. Lionel. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor of denying this motion? That's 5-0. Let us know when you're ready to go.
Thanks. Okay, I think I'm good. Now
All
we're
right,
gonna go to number
moving
2.
on to number 2, the area variance. And again, the request before us is from Land Use Code, Section 190-16, Table 16-3, for the minimum lot area. For this proposal tonight, 43,560 square feet would be required, and what's existing on site is 28,039 square feet. I make a motion to deny because I think this area variance is not needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property. I think I find that the property could be developed without this much of an overage that's being requested. I think that it's not within the spirit and intent of the ordinance to allow this much overage. I believe that that this variance would adversely affect the property values, particularly those immediately surrounding this parcel. I find that this area variance is contrary to public interest, and substantial justice is not served by allowing this overage. So I make a motion. I don't think it meets any of the 5 criteria. I make a motion to deny.
Seconded by Ms. McKay. Any discussion? All those in favor of denying this motion? It's 5-0. So motion fails. Again, there is a 30-day window of appeal, so I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that is applicable to both sides. All right, thank you very much for coming. With that, I'll close case number 5. Continuing on.
Any minutes, did we?
No.
No,
There
we
was,
didn't have any minutes because
No meeting minutes.
I kept saying, what? No
Is
minutes?
there an agenda for next week? No, wait, just a few minutes.
What? I'm sorry, I'm trying to get all this stuff together.
Here, I'll give my card to any questions.
You're welcome. Have a good night. It was
No minutes and.
Just quickly, so in case the audience is wondering, this conversation was about whether, what,
He just asked if they get notified if there's a rehearing or anything, which, people can ask for a rehearing request, and we don't notify the abutters on that. But if it's actually granted, then they would, of course. So there's no minutes, and there was an agenda for the next meeting with 2 cases.
Where's Wood Street?
It's by, if you start up on Concord Street, then there's Berkeley Street, and then Wood Street, and Elliott, it's,
in his
not
neck
Elliott,
of
it's,
To my neck of the woods.
Yeah. closer to her.
east of Concord and Berkeley Street in that general area.
East of Concord?
East of Concord.
If it is by
West of
Elliott, it would
Concord.
be west.
West of Concord.
I don't know if it's east or west.
Towards
I just know it's
Hudson.
Toward-
No, it's the other side.
Wood
Street?
There's nothing, there's nothing more than the river.
This is Wood at Cortland. That's.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, all I have to do is go straight down Cortland, and you're gonna run right into it. It's almost at the bottom.
It's south of like the Bellavance's property. It's
Okay.
towards Hudson. It's over there.
All
Wood
right.
Street, okay.
It's a north-south street.
Well, it's heading in that direction.
It's kind of towards the Merrimack River. It's
Okay.
east of
Take a walk.
Concord Street.
so we agree there's no regional impact?
No regional impact?
No, okay. Other than that, everybody just got a little information packet on the annual spring planning and zoning conference for information. Thank you very much for putting it in the package. Any other discussion? Anybody want to make a motion?
A motion to adjourn?
Motion on the floor is to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Lionel. All those in favor? It would be Mr. Mancara, sorry.
Aye.
Would be 5-0. We're adjourned at 9:16. Thank you.